Welcome, good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today to Webinar Wednesday with a roundtable discussion with deans and directors of admission. We're very excited and delighted that you're taking the time to participate with us here. I'm seeing a few names. I am curious to know where you are from. So if you could just type that in the chat or the Q&A feature, that would be great. I am curious to know that. And in turn, what I would like to also inform you of is who we are today and introduce you to the panelists today. My hope and our hope today is that this is a session in which you help guide the discussion. We have some questions that we have in mind that we believe that you might be curious about knowing the answers to, but we hope that you could ask us questions to help guide that conversation. My name is Lukman Arsalan, and I'm the Dean of Admission at Franklin and Marshall College, and I'm honored to be joined by two outstanding professionals and leaders in this profession. Kelly, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lukman. It's a pleasure to be here. And I also am very happy to be part of this opportunity to speak with you all as students and to be with great colleagues. So again, my name is Kelly Ball. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Strategic Initiatives at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. So Lukman, do you want me to share a little bit about the university now, or we'll go to that next?
Let's do it right after Leykia introduces herself.
Great.
Good morning or evening, potentially where you are. My name is Leykia Nulan, and I serve as Dean of Admission at Mount Holyoke College in Western Massachusetts. We're in the town of South Hadley.
And thank you so much, Kelly and Leykia. What I would like for the participants to know is how different our institutions are, because the differences in our institutions is going to highlight to you how the response of higher education institutions in the United States has been different to the current climate with COVID pandemic. And so what we would like to achieve as an objective in this webinar today is to answer some questions that we've faced as frequently asked questions from students during the COVID pandemic. Some of them are tough questions, so we're putting everything out there. And the second piece is, as we answer these questions, as you think about questions, whether they are specific to our respective institutions or general for higher education, we'd love for you to ask those questions. You have on the panel with me folks that have worked at multiple institutions across the United States with wealth of experience that really sums up multiple institutions. And you have three individuals who are leaders of their enrollment management in their respective colleges. What I would like from my fellow panelists to highlight their institutions and just describe their institutions, because there are many types of institutions in the United States. If you are tuning in from overseas, and if you are based in the US, you already are very well versed of the differences of institutions. But what I would like to highlight are some unique characteristics about these institutions, whether they are public, private, small, large, medium, what type of curriculum, etc. Kelly, would you be able to share a little bit more about Case Western Reserve? I had the pleasure of being on your campus during the International ACAC conference, and I know, excuse me, I know it's a beautiful, large campus.
Yes. So Case Western Reserve is definitely a beautiful, large campus. However, we are a four-year private institution, and we tend to be smaller in terms of our student body. So we're just shy of around 6,000 undergraduate students. One of the things that's wonderful, though, about Case Western Reserve, two sides of that, is our location and what we provide students in terms of the access and the opportunities inclusive of the location. So if you've never been to Cleveland or you've never heard of Cleveland, we're in Northeast Ohio, right off of Lake Erie. And 5 minutes from downtown Cleveland is our beautiful campus. but that affords us the opportunity for connections with international businesses, small businesses, mid-sized businesses. So we have very entrepreneurial spirit. And that entrepreneurial spirit connects with the types of students we're looking for and we're working with on campus. Students who not only want to come to campus with ideas or have the spark of an idea, but then have the opportunity to see it come to fruition, because we're a campus built on resources. We like to say that not only will you have the opportunity to do it, but you will do it because of the resources we provide. And in fact, 99% of our students, it sounds like a made up number, but it is real. 99% of our students are engaging in some sort of learning by doing, whether that's because of the opportunities within our city location, or whether it's the opportunities with what's physically near our campus. We're located next to the second largest medical facility operations in the world, and that being the Cleveland Clinic. If you've heard about it lately in the news, it's popped up a lot in its connection with sponsoring the debate. We're not connected with the politics, but necessarily the opportunity for our students to get the hands-on medical practitioner work in their undergrad is phenomenal. On top of that, it's got its proximity to the arts and the humanities for our students who are not just focused on the STEM fields, but they're focused across all different academic opportunities at the university. So I could go on forever, but I want to make sure everyone has their time. So in a nutshell, our students do and think by doing, and we are based in a more city-like location, and that's a big factor for us.
Kelly, would you mind just sharing also the number of majors that you offer? Because I think that is a highlight at Case Western Reserve.
Yes, absolutely. We're 100 plus majors. And in that, our students don't come to the university aligned specifically with a major. They declare it as they go through, because the big part for us is that you're exploring what it is that interests you. And we span the arts and the humanities. Even though a lot of folks think of us as very STEM heavy, we have the span across all spectrums. Our biggest and most popular fields tend to be our engineering, our health sciences programs, pre-professional health.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And what I love about the panelists today is that we represent 3 private institutions, and you're going to find out how different we are, because I'd love for you to share more about Mount Holyoke. I was also, I hate to say this again, I was at another conference at Mount Holyoke, so I got to see your beautiful campus as well. But I know that you serve a specific community as well. Would you be able to share more about Mount Holyoke, please?
Absolutely. So indeed, Mount Holyoke is perhaps the most quintessentially beautiful, New England beautiful place I've ever worked. It's just picture perfect in that way. And I'm happy to share a little bit more about it and to be here with all of you. So you're going to hear how different we are now, right? Mount Holyoke was founded in 1837 as the first of the 7 sister colleges, really at a time when there were no college options for women. And what that means is that Mary Lyon, the woman who pioneered Mount Holyoke and women's education in this nation, set up a model that really became something that other schools would use. So you heard me reference the 7 sisters. Originally, there were 7 schools that were women's colleges that were comparable to the then all-male Ivy League, right? So they were meant to be these rigorous institutions of study for women who were interested in furthering their education. So these schools have always had a legacy of educating future leaders, particular future female leaders. We all seek to admit students who come from various backgrounds from all over the world, all over the country, but I think a signature of Mount Holyoke is that we're looking for students who are ready to take intellectual risks and who are interested in upholding a spirit of social justice that we believe is woven through the fabric of our institution. So although we began as a women's college and we are historically women's college, today Mount Holyoke is gender diverse and gender affirming, and that we welcome applications from female students, transgender students, and non-binary students. And you'll find that there are 5 of us left in the sister colleges, Smith, Mount Holyoke, Bryn Mawr, Barnard, and Wellesley colleges. Radcliffe and Vassar were the other 2 which are now either co-ed or no longer taking undergraduate students. So Mount Holyoke is a school that is certainly dedicated to upholding and delivering a rich and rigorous academic experience. That's no exception among the schools on this panel. We promise you to have a world-class faculty who will be engaged, no teaching assistants, which is one of the values of going to a small school. But we are a liberal arts and sciences institution. So I think sometimes the liberal arts can get a bad rap as just being focused on this nebulous sort of thing. And your parents may say, well, how am I going to get a job when I graduate from a liberal arts institution? Tell me about these professional programs. And I think Mount Holyoke addresses that really well, in that we have a strong STEM program, and we also have a really strong commitment to teaching our students how to read, write, and think critically and analytically across all of their majors. Lots of the work that students will do will be interdisciplinary. We have 48 majors that students can pick from, but almost half of those are interdisciplinary majors that you'll find learning happening across different departments. And that's pretty much common among small liberal arts schools as well. We are small. Again, we have about 2,200 undergraduate students, a 9-to-1 student to teacher ratio, and an average classroom size of about 20. So really, more than 85% of the classes you take will have fewer than 20 students. I believe about 10% of our classes have fewer than 10 students, and there's always the opportunity to design an independent study, to work closely with your faculty members, to do research as early as your first year at the college. And like you heard at Case Western, you don't need to come into the college knowing what you want to major in. You've got at least 2 years of study that you can get under your belt before you need to tell us what you want to major in. So our students are almost, evenly or the same size split across the different disciplines. About 36% of our students will major in a STEM field, about 35% in the social sciences, and another 28% or so in the humanities. So our students are really spread out kind of nicely. I don't know how we magically made that happen, but they do it, and they do it really well. And our most popular major at the moment is computer science. No surprise. I remember when we would do these conversations and I would say, our most popular major is psychology. And now we're shifting to computer science. So I'm sure you'll hear that at lots of schools across the United States and across the world. But that's just a little bit about us. And I'm happy to share more if there are questions.
Thank you so much. You're so right about the popular major, because I also have observed that with popularity of TV shows, oftentimes specific majors would become popular. I remember criminal justice was a very popular one a few years ago. So, and I appreciate how you described your institutions, Leykia and Kelly, because private institutions, different sizes, different locations, offering very similar yet unique academic opportunities. And it's about the feel that you're going to have. And the reason that I wanted us to start with this brief about our institutions is because it'll help provide the context for you to understand how we are making decisions that pertain to admission for students like yourselves. At Franklin and Marshall College, very similar to Mount Holyoke College, we are also a small private liberal arts and sciences college located in a small city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Lancaster, Pennsylvania is about an hour outside from Philadelphia, 2 hours and 15 minutes from DC, but if you drive like I do, it's less than 2 hours. And it's also about 2.5 hours from New York City. I am new at Franklin and Marshall College. I started at Franklin and Marshall College on July 1st as their inaugural Dean of Admission. And I can very much empathize with the process that you are going through in terms of identifying colleges, sitting through webinars, listening to folks talk. And that was my experience when I had interacted with Franklin and Marshall College. I interacted with about 50 different individuals, student leaders, throughout my interviews, but what was very obvious and apparent to me was the sense of community that Franklin Marshall really highlighted. Franklin Marshall College is about 2,400 students that come from a little over 50 countries. And the sense of community really translated even when I came in as a dean. I had never stepped a foot on campus or seen Lancaster or the college. And I realized as I interacted with current students through different focus groups, I met with over 60 students so far in various focus groups. The piece of community was certainly echoed in that, but another piece that was very apparent and pivotal in the student experience was the faculty interactions. I realized that students who come to FNM are very committed to their academics. With almost 60 fields of study, one of the pieces that I do want to highlight to you is that we, the three of us, oftentimes get asked questions around what is the right major. And if you noticed, both Kelly and Leykia said how you can come in without determining what your major is, and then you could explore that. And that is something that deans and directors of admission really will share with you. They'll share with you what are the majors that we offer, but then will help you think about how to explore your passions and what you're interested in. I'll give you a specific example for class of 2019 at FNM. Approximately 6 students actually went to work for a large consulting firm, Deloitte. And 2 of those students studied, one of them studied business, the other studied economics, but the rest studied German, public health, and psychology. So it's not necessarily about finding that right major. I think, and I believe that it is about how you design your experience and your life at these institutions, whichever institution you end up going to. And so what I'd like to shift the conversation to is answering some questions that we have articulated. And I want to, and some of these questions, as I was putting these questions together, I realized, these are tough questions to answer for especially enrollment managers right now. And that's where I want to lead this conversation. On a higher level, that's not the application process. So I want to start with a broad question and ask you, Kelly, at Case Western, what is currently happening on your college campus with our students back? What is happening?
It's a great question. And certainly it is, I was writing a school counselor last night, and it is strange times, and we're all gonna probably have different answers and what we say for today. Who knows what the spring will be like, but I'll start with where we are today. So our students are a mix of virtual or on campus. A lot of our students, because of the high nature of hands-on learning, particularly with our pre-professional health students and our health students, they happen to be on campus because of the need to access that hands-on opportunity. That's not to say, though, that our physics students haven't had the opportunity for creative virtual learning, but in essence, we have a small proportion of our students physically on campus living in the residence halls. And certainly for our international populations, those that have been able to or have remained in the States, we've worked to accommodate those students. And for our virtual working from or remote students, our faculty have worked at lengths to provide opportunities for that continued focus of hands-on learning in just unique and different ways, and even ways that connect with different communities. So it's provided us different ways and different learning techniques that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to experience before. Now, as we look forward to the spring semester, there are a lot of unknowns. We just announced that we'll be doing a spring term in January that connects with our full spring term that will start in February. So it's a little confusing, but we're looking to see how many students we can bring back to campus. And again, that focus on students who have needs like our international students and making sure that they're accommodated. But overall, the last thing I'll share is that we are COVID testing, we have health screening reminders every day, and our, knock on wood, we're doing very well on campus in terms of maintenance and a lot of negative testing. And the great part about that is because everybody wants to be back, they're taking the strides to work as a community to do well, be well, and wear their masks. So.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Leykia, how does that compare to your experience at as the dean at Mount Holyoke? Are you in the office? What's going on?
So I'll be fully transparent in saying that we planned to have a hybrid model that would be very similar to what Case Western is offering now. And we pulled the plug on it about 2 weeks before we were set to have students back on campus, which actually ended up being the trend in the area we are in. So Mount Holyoke is in the Connecticut River Valley, and we partner with 4 other institutions that are nearby. So Smith College again, Hampshire College, Amherst College, and the University of Massachusetts. And so right before, and we work very closely because we partner, our students are able to take classes at one school or the other. And we don't really want to be out of step either with our academic calendar or really even with our plans for who can be on campuses. And there was sort of a wave that happened where we all just one by one decided we were going to go back and reverse our plans because cases actually started to tick up in the area right before we were set to open. So we pulled the plug on that, which meant that we only left campus open to students who needed essentially emergency housing. So if they could not study from home because home was not a safe space to be, or home did not have reliable internet connection, or perhaps they are homeless, for example, right now, they were able to apply and receive housing to stay on campus. So there are perhaps maybe somewhere between 150 to 180 students who are living on campus right now. And they do have access to a limited dining operation where they can only receive takeout and they have to stay masked at all times. But most everyone is actually learning remotely, even if it is just from their room remotely on campus. But we have still mandatory testing for everyone who's there. So we do have faculty who are coming in and teaching in a hybrid model. So a handful of students may be in the class with them, while the rest of their students may be literally all over the world learning online. And anyone who is on campus interacting in that way, living there or teaching there often, has to be tested twice a week. So we have a testing center that's open on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. And students and staff and faculty who are working there can be tested at all times on those days. And we're working with the Broad Institute to help us receive those test results within the day so that we can keep track of any new cases. And thus far, we've only had 2, and that was several weeks ago. So I believe those folks are now healthy and back at it. But it's been interesting because we have several what we call emergency response teams that are working to plan for next semester. We are set to actually make some announcement at some point in November, but we're all working furiously to figure out what the next step will be. And so we're crafting a plan right now for what does it look like if we stay where we are at about 150 to 250 students? What will it look like if we scale up to say 600 students? And what would it look like if we were at half capacity at about 1,100 students? And that was really the plan for this fall, to come back at 1,100. How much isolation space would we have? How many cases should we expect upon arrival? There's such great technology where you can know how many cases to expect just based on the population of your students returning. So all of that to say, we're actively planning and trying to figure it out. But really anxious to welcome our students back to campus as well.
Thank you, Leykia. It's interesting, as you were speaking, one of the participants asked a question of what do you foresee will happen for the next academic year? And, you know, I think, Kelly, you answered that question where you said, we don't even know what's going to happen for spring semester, you know? So I think we're taking things day by day, week by week, month by month, and looking at the guidance from the Center for Disease Control, looking at our local state guidance. And as Leykia mentioned, we're also looking at what our peer institutions are doing, because we want to ensure that we are aligned correctly with what other colleges and universities are doing. I think if it was I think if it's safe to say if there is a common wish amongst institutions in the United States, it is that we want to open our campuses and welcome back our students. The reality of executing that is challenging. I'll share with you some of the challenges we faced at Franklin Marshall College and where we are right now. Where we are right now is out of the 2,400 students, we have 1,400 students back on campus that are enrolled in a hybrid learning or are commuting. Many of our international students who decided to stay from the spring semester are still on campus, but those who opted to return home and or new incoming international students were unable to travel due to the various restriction travel bans that were instituted by all sorts of countries. What we ended up happening, the challenge that we had was we had more students wanting to return to Franklin Marshall College, and we realized that we would be in a situation where we are very densely populated. So we decided to de-densify the campus by asking sophomores to not return to campus. It was a very difficult decision because here you are offering to students to return to campus. And then very much as Leykia mentioned, where she mentioned how 2 weeks prior to things going online, they had to make a tough decision. And that was the situation that we were put in, where we had to make a tough decision and say, we need to then de-densify campus. Sophomores have experienced first year, so let's ask sophomores to not return for the fall semester. And for spring semester, we will not be asking first years to return to campus. So it was a tough decision for us to make. And much like Case Western and Mount Holyoke, with the students that are enrolled and as employees, we're testing students regularly. We're doing tests per residence halls, depending on various results. And it has been oddly uniting the community, because one of the pieces that we do is, as employees, we volunteer to welcome students for their testing because they have to do it routinely. And so we understand that it is an inconvenience for our students. So we've been volunteering to check in students, et cetera, as the medical professionals conduct the COVID testing. Out of the 1,400 students currently on campus, there are 2 students that are tested positive for this week, that total cases. So it has maintained as a low exposure. And I think Kelly was right in saying how students really want to be back on campus, and they are doing everything they can in order to not jeopardize that. And we understand if there's anybody that understands the sense of urgency of these components, it's the 3 people that are here, that we get it, how critical it is to have these. Because I know that many of the audience today are students, but if we don't have students on campus, we have to make tough decisions on our campus to realize, do we need these staff members currently who would be assisting in residence halls? Do we need to employ those? So we have to also in turn make tough decisions if students are not on campus. So it is a very tough situation for all around, whether it's a student or not. And I want to skip a couple of these questions and go into, because it is tough for a high school student to make a decision when they haven't even visited a school yet. What would you say to that, Leykia? How can students engage with Mount Holyoke College, or any other college for that matter, if they are unable to visit you, whether it's domestically or internationally?
Absolutely. I think one of the blessings of this moment is that it has shifted higher education as a whole to provide access to our campuses digitally and virtually. And I don't think that that's going to go away. I think that this will stick with us forever. We all see the value in it. And perhaps we had already been thinking that this was the right thing to do, but now we've been forced to do it. And that serves as a huge advantage to students and families who want to get to know campuses and can't get there in person. So, for example, at Mount Holyoke, we're offering virtual information sessions that are easier for us to loop students, current students into, because they don't have to travel anywhere. They can do it from the comfort of their dorm room or from the comfort of home. The same thing with high school visits. So we're out on the road right now traveling, and never before have we had such ease in saying, you know what, I want to bring a student with me, because it might be useful for you to hear from them instead of hearing from me, the old person, to tell you about how awesome it is to be in college right now, right? So I think that has been a real benefit. I think you can also find that, you can speak to us in a non-evaluative interview format online. We're using Zoom to offer interviews. And then we've got a ton of virtual programming, right? So you can visit us to learn more about how we're responding to COVID, or why we think Mount Holyoke is different from other schools that may be similar, and all offered at different times of the day. We're obviously catering to both an international audience, but also to a domestic audience, an East Coast audience, a West Coast audience. So we try to offer things often enough that you may be able to catch it at a time that works for you. Additionally, though, there is the one thing that we cannot replace, right? And that is you and me together. We want to offer you virtual tours. We want you to be able to see and experience campus. And we do have those available as well. And many campuses do, but it won't ever replace you being with us in person. And we get that. So in this moment, I'm really encouraging students to take us up on every opportunity we give you to actually talk to the people who live and work in the Mount Holyoke community, because their stories are based on much lived experience, right? Like Lukman, I'm also new. I just met a year at Mount Holyoke on October 1st, so you got me beat by a couple months. But I know what it's like to have to try to learn a place intimately when half of your time there has been not there. And for sure, it slows down that learning curve dramatically, right? I wish that I could sit in person in some of the centers that we have so that I could learn about them and hear people's voices and connect the dots. But I decided that I'm not going to wait for that opportunity to come back in person. I'm going to start scheduling meetings. So I'm still having meetings with our Miller Worley Center and our Center for Leadership, or our Center for Career Development, because it's still valuable for me to hear from those voices what they offer, what resources and support they can share with our students. And then at some point when I do get to campus, I'll be able to say, aha, I remember having a conversation about this place, this space, and now I'm going to put this all together and really round out what I think I know. So the more chances you can take us up on speaking to people who are in the community, I think the better equipped you'll be to make your decision feeling like you know a piece of us at least.
Yeah.
Kelly, how is that translating at an institution that is slightly larger than the two institutions that are represented here? Are there opportunities like that available at Case Western for students to interact?
Yes, in fact, the first thing I'll say is I completely agree with all of what's been said. I think that, I actually, you both have me beat. I started at Case Western Reserve in August. It makes me a newbie, but I can sympathize with students going through the search, because I'm trying to learn a university and a city from afar. So from living that experience, and particularly as it relates to your question, we are doing the same things. While our office isn't open for physical tours, for your safety and the safety of our students who are current students, so that we can bring you all back. In regards, we are being as creative and forward thinking as everyone is being, and how we can maximize those opportunities. Also recognizing that there's Zoom fatigue. I'll share other things that are great resources, dig deeper into our websites. I know that a lot of students do just kind of a quick search and they're looking at the admissions pages. We've got these websites for a reason, so dig deep. The other thing is social media, our accounts, whether we have admissions accounts for Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or just larger general university accounts, those tags are great to follow, because I can speak for Case Western Reserve, and I imagine it's the same for both of you, is that our students are remaining active, whether we have the pockets of students who are fortunate enough to be on campus, or our students who are fortunate enough to have the online learning experience. They're having virtual experiences. So for example, this is Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, right? One of our student organizations ran their very first conference and unfortunately had to pivot internationally. And it's not really unfortunate, because they had great interactions and they were able to do more and meet more. So looking at, again, those opportunities to connect with us, social media and our events, and look at the different types of events we all offer. So for us, for a larger institution, we try and offer as much as we can, but we also look at the one-on-one experiences. So take advantage of interview opportunities if those exist. It might be something that's ends up being part of your application process, and it might just be something that's a part of your search process for you to determine if it's the right place for you. The other thing is, for us, location matters in the sense of that proximity to the city of Cleveland and what we have within our campus community. So take a look at those resources. What's happening in the Cleveland area? What's happening in what our pocket of campus is called University Circle? Our museums and what resources they offer you, because it's not just what academics we're going to offer you or those resources, it's that community that you're going to live in. So another opportunity for us is, not only do we get the chance to bring our students with us now, bring them on our high school visits, which I love to do. So I totally agree with you there. In my former institution, I used to lead the tour guides and I used to call them into the meetings. But the other opportunity is, some of us are offering programs where it's just the students. And so those student Q&As, those student opportunities, that's a purity in and of itself. The admissions representatives can share so much, but when you're looking for that lived experience, and particularly the current one because of the climate we're all in, that's another opportunity. So don't just think, oh, well, I sat on that information session already, I know what I know. Yeah, but take that opportunity to hear 30 minutes more from a student, and maybe they might turn the tide. So to answer the question, we're doing a lot of the same, and then continuing to think about other ways. And the last thing I'll share is, for us, it's important to also share kind of what the academic component looks like. So we're looking at ways, while we don't have a big open house that's translated to a virtual experience, we're working with our faculty across the educational spectrum to provide information sessions in that light as well. Because it's not just about who we are and where we are, and the fun side of campus, we know it's also what you want to study so that you can get a job when you finish. So look at those opportunities as well.
And if there's a sentiment that is shared amongst the three of us, is that us as representatives of colleges and higher education institutions in the United States, we are so eager to connect with students in the same way that students are eager to connect with us. And if there are ways that we are not meeting you where you are, inform us. And I promise you that the three of us will make it happen in terms of finding ways to connect with you in an innovative way. And you see that even with what is happening today. The three of us are here representing three different institutions, and we've opened this far and wide for individuals to participate in, because as Leykia mentioned earlier, these type of programmings, the silver lining with COVID-19 is the fact that it has pushed colleges to disruptively innovate its practices, and programming like this probably will not go away. I think what you will see is that in-person interactions that you have gotten accustomed to, And you will have these new interactions, even in the same way as we go into when Kelly was talking about the outcomes and where you end up working. Your workplace will be significantly different in 4 or 5 years from now compared to what it was a year ago. So as these situations change, we are trying to adapt for these components. At Franklin and Marshall College, I will not repeat the many great offerings that my colleagues are already offering because we're offering very similar components to those. I would say the piece that we are offering is an in-person tour opportunities for states that are not on the quarantine list that is set by the state of Pennsylvania. And the way that we decided to do the tours was actually because our tour guides wanted to do it. And so we thought initially we could not do tours because we thought, the students may not want to do it. So we had Lancaster General Hospital come in and do a rehearsal with our employees and our student workers on what would be a reimagined safe tour. So we purchased masks for our visitors, face shields. We have a speaker and microphone for our student tour guides so that they don't have to yell. And it's only a one-on-one tour per family. And the total number of participants in one group or one family cannot exceed 5. So we set all these different parameters and limitations to have these tours. And I think in a way it's challenged all of our employees at the college because we are identifying time slots where there's not much of student mobility between classes to minimize exposure of individuals from outside of our community. So each of these decisions that we made, we really had to think about and repercussions and how we're doing it and what we're going to do. There's a question that has come up that I think would be a great way to go into is about gap year and requesting deferral. And I know these are 2 questions, and I'm sorry I lumped it into one. So starting with gap year, what do you think reactions are going to be when you are sitting in admissions committee and you see students that have applied to you with gap years? Are you going to look at that favorably, unfavorably, or in a neutral way, or in a different way that I may not have been thinking about? Kelly, do you want to lead us with that? What do you think I recognize the 3 of us are all new in our institutions, but there's a similarity in the way that applicants are evaluated. And so I think we're all going to have the same answer here. So I want to hear, Kelly, would you lead us with that discussion?
Sure. It is true. Being newer to the institution makes it a little challenging. But what I will say is that in no way will we hold a gap year against a student. We certainly want to, in 2 reasons. One is because of just the general opportunity that it might allow you. If you're a student taking advantage of other opportunities, maybe it's educational, maybe it's personal exploration, but also in recognition of COVID-19. I mean, there are opportunities. Unfortunately, it impacts students' mobility. Financials certainly are a factor in consideration. So for us, even though we haven't solidified all of our evaluation application plans for this cycle, even moving forward into the next cycle, I imagine that the gap year will be part of a favorable portion of the evaluation, as I've never worked for an institution where it's really held against a student. The other thing I'll share is on the deferral side. Our deferral policy has shifted over time, certainly in relation to COVID. So I think it's like the return to campus question. I think it's a little difficult to answer as we think about moving forward what the deferral response will be, because it will depend on how our return to campus opportunities are for a student. So unfortunately, what I'll say is I think it's best to circle back on that question as you go through the process and as you're making your final decisions in terms of the deferral. So I wouldn't discourage a student from applying who might ultimately want to defer, because again, I think there are going to be conversations about what that really means for students and that opportunity as it relates to the climate and what it impacts and how it impacts you. And quite frankly, how it impacts our universities, because certainly we can't defer everyone who has an offer of admission. That is a big factor. We do have to have students on campus, so that, to what Lukman said earlier, you know, in COVID, we're thinking not just about our students, but we're thinking about our faculty and our staff. And so we do have to have students, so factors into that. But full on, that's what I would say, checking back as it relates to deferral. And I don't think the gap year will be held against a student. In fact, it could be a great opportunity.
How about you, Lukman? What do you think? I mean, you've observed the summer deferral requests coming through, and I can only imagine that flexibility was the name of the game. So
Yeah.
tell us.
The first word that comes to mind truly is madness, sheer madness. But yeah, we saw 20% of our applicant pool or of our admitted student base request to defer either a semester or a year. And we already had a January start or a spring start in place. So that wasn't, you know, having students just need to take a semester wasn't a big deal. But the volume is unlike anything we saw before, because things were so uncertain when we were asking and people just didn't know what to do. So we wanted to remain flexible. We've got a ton of students who couldn't get to the US because they're in countries where they couldn't travel here. So I think, like Kelly said, you know, we're in a moment now where we're thinking about how what we did in allowing over 100 students to defer for a semester or a year will shift what we need to do as we read applications this fall and this spring and make decisions, right? I really suspect that it will be better than everyone thinks, and that, you know, not having students start when they were supposed to start will not completely break next year's system. I think we are very invested in getting our students on campus, and we'll figure this out. We will do the nitty-gritty work of thinking about how much space we have and capacity for classrooms. Maybe it will cause us to innovate again, right? Maybe we'll have to say that we have to continue this hybrid learning model because of this. So we'll figure it out, but certainly I think keep asking this question is a good piece of advice. And in terms of, you know, students who need to gap, it's true, we're used to seeing it. I read Kenya, for example, and Kenyan students often come in after having taken 1 or 2 years off from school. Totally normal. In all truth, you may be burned out after you finish doing high school, right? You may need a break so that you can start college refreshed. And we respect that and we honor it, and it will not have a negative impact on your application at all.
Thank you so much. I think I completely agree with both of you about the gap year component. I think gap years oftentimes are very helpful for students in terms of their maturity, in terms of the activities that they're doing, in terms of their involvement. When it is not helpful is if you are just lounging and not doing anything. I think it's, you know, investing in your time wisely and sharing the story about that. I recall at one of my former institutions, there was a student that had applied and was denied admission. And the next year she applied and took a gap year and did amazing things in that gap year, that we really felt compelled that there was this sense of maturity and growth that the student had. And in terms of deferrals, I agree, Leykia. I think the answer to this is going to continuously change, and it's continuously going to challenge us as institutions to make things work for students, for families, for our faculty members. At Franklin Marshall College, we too witnessed a historically large number of requests of deferrals. Were we surprised? No. We expected it. And the reality is, if students wants to defer, I can't say, oh no, you have to come, because they were genuine concerns. We were not in a position of announcing whether we will be open or not, because we simply did not know. So many students had decided, you know what, I don't want to sit in that limbo or uncertainty, and I want to make a decision for myself. And I am an advocate of that. You know what is best for you. And if you need a deferral, you need a deferral. And oftentimes, whether it's during COVID or pre-COVID, that we ask simple questions for students about deferral. For example, there are always students from certain countries who will always defer for military service. Other students might defer because of medical reasons or family reasons, or they had a very unique opportunity to participate in an internship with a startup company. So there are really legitimate reasons for deferrals. And each deferral request, whether it is a large institution or a small institution, oftentimes is truly evaluated and considered to see, yeah, this does make sense. And there's an interaction that happens with the student around that. I know that there's another question that came up about test scores and testing. What I would like to know is, one, is your institution, where does it stand in terms of testing, whether it's SAT or ACT as aptitude test? And since we do have an international audience in the room, if you could also touch briefly about also English language proficiency testing and where your flexibility stands in that. And then I'd like to take it into a philosophical approach around the testing. So Leykia, where does Mount Holyoke stand in terms of its aptitude testing and language proficiency?
Yeah. I can't wait to get to that philosophical part because I got a lot to say on that. But, Mount Holyoke actually has been test optional for 20 years. So this movement that lots of schools are sort of maybe just having to grapple with in going temporarily test optional, for us, it is old news, and it will continue after things sort of resolve when we can have some sense of normalcy after COVID. But we will continue to be test optional. We feel really comfortable with evaluating applications without standardized tests. With the TOEFL, we've done everything we could to try to figure out how we can offer you opportunities to get access, which is why we recently adopted the use of Duolingo so that people could actually have a digital way to test and get English proficiency scores to us. So while we can't waive that requirement, there are options, right? Like we offer interviews. You can always send us a note to say, I want to be able to speak with someone so that you can see the strength of my English speaking skills and my comprehension skills. But also we've got this online opportunity that you can sort of send us your EP or your English proficiency scores through Duolingo. So that's a piece of how we're managing it. We know that IB exams have changed and not been offered. We know that in the US, AP exams have dramatically seen a shift in the curriculum and the amount of time for each test. So we're remaining flexible, right? We know that these are changes beyond the student's control, and we're gonna take it in stride and do the best we can with whatever you can give us.
Kelly, how about you? Where Swiss Reserve, SAT, ACT optional? What is it?
Great. So we initially decided very early on that we were going to be SAT, ACT test optional for students entering for the fall of 2021. And just last week, we were able to announce that our university has approved us going test optional for students entering through at least fall 2023. A big component of that determination for us was the fact that we think the impact will be a little bit far and wide and long-term. And we want to make sure that we're as upfront and proactive with whatever we can be in this world of uncertainty. So test optional for our students. We're certainly aware of other restrictions, and students who are reaching out to us to have those conversations, we're engaging in them. There is a moment of flexibility that exists in all of what we're answering. So some of it is what I said earlier, is also checking back with us if you happen to be a student who's passed that entering class of fall 2023, for Case Western Reserve, check back on our site as it relates to other flexibility needs. It makes sense to do that. As far as English language proficiency, again, it's something where we do ask that you provide those, but if you are a student in a circumstance where access to that exam or test date is not likely, come talk to us. Let's see what we can connect on and be flexible with where it's possible. And really that's our stance at this point with the world circumstances.
I am gonna just skip to the slide of our contact information because I noticed that we are getting close to our time limit. This is the contact information to reach us with additional questions, whether they are specific to our institutions or general. And at FNM, similar to Mount Holyoke, SAT, ACT optional have been so pre-COVID, and we also added Duolingo. And I'm somebody who moved to the United States as an international student, and so I certainly understand the challenges with taking those language proficiency examinations, etc. I think there's a big movement in the United States around SAT and ACT, especially with COVID. It has highlighted big inequities and access issues with that. Leykia, I know that you wanted to comment on it, and I would love for you to lead us in that discussion for the remainder of 2 minutes as we bid farewell to our participants.
Sure. So I'll be really transparent in saying that I serve on regional council for the college board. So I'm intimately connected to the work that a big testing organization is doing, and folks that work there are really, really good friends. Many of them have been on the other side of the desk working in college admission for years. So I believe in the individuals and I believe in the work that they're trying to do. I also think this is a really interesting and powerful moment for us to question if we can truly be anti-racist institutions and critical of our policies and practices and procedures and still uphold a strong connection to standardized testing when we know that despite its best efforts, standardized tests don't always honor a strength-based, asset-based way of thinking. The tests aren't asking students to tell us what the best way is to warm a baby bottle for your brother or sister, or what tools you need to take over to grandma and grandpa's house if you're gonna do their lawn mowing and their leaf blowing this winter, or how long you should bake a butternut squash, right? Because you've got to cook dinner tonight for your family. And some of our students are coming from those types of backgrounds and have those types of responsibilities. And those are the things that make them stick out to us in their application, the reasons we call them resilient or gritty. Those are the things that make us think that even if their transcripts or standardized test scores don't showcase their best light, them in the best light, that perhaps there are elements of what they will bring to our communities that can't be measured by a day and a few hours on a test, right? So I think that this is a critical moment for our testing companies to think about how they will provide both physical access, right, when testing centers are closed, but also access in terms of how they can create exams that may fully and better assess the real assets and strengths that students bring to college with them when they arrive, and that those points are beyond some of what we're getting now with standardized tests. So I could go on, but that's just my little sound bite.
It just shows how passionate you are about it. What I would love to say is my sincere and gratitude to those of you who have attended today. And I said this in the beginning of the session, I am so humbled and honored that I got to co-present with you both, Leykia and Kelly. Thank you so much for making the time to do this. There's an encore show tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. And with that, I'm gonna give you your time back because I know that we are slightly over time. Thank you very much for your great questions, and thank you to my panelists for your time in sharing this. Best of luck to you all. Take care. Bye-bye.